Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The city of San Diego has reached an agreement to pay what is believed to be the largest settlement over a police killing in U.S. history. The San Diego City Council today approved a settlement of $30 million to be paid to the family of a black teenager who was shot and killed by a police officer. In January, 16-year-old Kanoa Wilson was standing on the trolley platform at Santa Fe Depot when a gunman fired in his direction. Wilson then ran away, and as he exited the station, Officer Daniel Gold shot him in the back. Wilson was pronounced dead 35 minutes later.
As a father of a young black man, this hurts. This could be my son. If only you could begin to understand the fear I often have when my son leaves the house. I must say it is a real fear, and I truly believe it's warranted. I said this before, and I'll say this again. This is the black experience in America.
The district attorney's office is still investigating the case and has not yet decided whether to file criminal charges against the officer. The San Diego City Council today is voting on the use of surveillance technology. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says privacy advocates are objecting to automated license plate readers.
ALPRs are used by law enforcement and private businesses to track the movement of vehicles. San Diego police say the cameras have been a force multiplier, helping detectives recover stolen vehicles and solve crimes.
Our ALPR cameras capture a license plate on our public streets, something that anyone and everyone can already see. The system records a plate, a time, and a location. It does not identify who the driver is or who is in the vehicle.
But privacy advocates have called on the city to cut ties with the company that makes the cameras, Flock Safety. The company says they do not fully track vehicles and that they delete images not used for a, quote, investigation. Critics say the company operates unethically, and the company has collaborated with immigration enforcement. California law and SDPD policy prohibit sharing the camera's data with federal agencies, though privacy advocates say those prohibitions can be hard to enforce.
Being seen in public is different than being stalked in public over a period of time by a network of surveillance sensors. The Supreme Court has affirmed that individuals retain a reasonable expectation of privacy, and even in public, that the Fourth Amendment protects people, not just places.
San Diego law requires an annual report on surveillance technologies and an annual vote from the city council on whether to continue their use. SDPD has identified 54 such technologies, all of which they say are necessary for public safety. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Well, the theme of pleasantly cool nights but very warm days will win out here as we move through the next few days into the remainder of the week. In fact, some of you are going to make a run to near record highs. We have our eyes on you in Ramona on at least Wednesday afternoon. Down to 43 in Ramona, 48 in El Cajon, 49 in San Diego late tonight. But during the day, we really begin to warm up, and the warming trend will continue through the middle of the week. Details ahead.
San Diego Unified leaders announced plans today to fix, quote, systemic issues with special education in the district. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers spoke to district leaders who say underfunding in special education from the state and federal government is causing financial strain.
Leaders with San Diego Unified gathered at the district office today to discuss the future of special education in the district.
We are looking to redesign our system with one purpose, to ensure that every student with a disability has access to meaningful learning, timely support, and a safe, inclusive environment.
The announcement comes as the district is facing a projected $47 million budget deficit for next school year. Superintendent Fabi Bugula says underfunding of special education from the state and federal government is financially straining the district. They're advocating for more funding.
I'm bringing up this issue now because actually we should have brought it up a long time ago. This has been a problem for a very long time.
One of the issues they want to solve is the, quote, over-identification of students for special education services. They're also planning to redesign their approach for special education. The district says the number of students requiring services has surged in the last decade. In 2015, about 11% of students in the district had individualized education plans. This year, it's 17%. Bagula says the special education services now cost roughly $400 million annually, but they only receive about $125 million from outside sources. The remaining $275 million comes from their general funds.
To truly construct a system that is going to help the education of every child with an IEP, we need the funding to provide that proactive system.
Sarah Kiefer has a first-grade son who relies on special education programs. She's also the chair of the district's Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. She says underfunding of special education has long affected student services.
But I see other families struggle, and I think my biggest thing is I want families to not have to know the ins and outs of this whole system just to get the services that my child gets.
District officials are expected to talk more about what's causing the projected budget deficit at tomorrow's school board meeting. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Crews working a train track project over the Bataquitos Lagoon are also working on a project to help an endangered bird. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn shows us what's happening and what oyster shells have to do with it.
As any expectant parent knows, there's a lot of work getting the nursery ready before the baby comes. In a way, this is what these Sandak crews are doing. Prepping the nursery, but they're doing it for the birds, literally.
To rebuild this W2 lease turn nesting site that we're currently standing on.
It's part of a project to double track the rail line over the Bataquitos Lagoon. Crews are using the sand dredged from the project to rebuild the site. This nesting site was first built in the 1990s, and the hope is to restore it to its original 4.2-acre size.
Over time, it has started to erode a little bit, so we are pushing that sand back up against the site to restore it back to its original size and to prevent it from eroding in the future.
Tim Pesci is a senior environmental planner for Sandag. He says the restoration work began earlier this fall, after the nesting season ended in August. Today, crews are spreading crushed oyster shells on the site.
They are ground nesting birds, so that means that they lay their nests in a little scrape on the surface that's about an inch thick.
They're using crushed oysters because it resembles the speckles on the eggs for the least terns to camouflage their eggs when nesting.
So if they're able to nest in an area that's lined with oyster shells, they blend in really nicely.
Crews will soon add roofing tiles to the site to simulate driftwood shelters, providing places for least-tern chicks to escape the heat and predators, and installing these mesh fences as a sort of baby gate to stop chicks from falling into the water. Restoration work is expected to finish by year's end to give the site time to settle before the nesting season begins in April. Alexander Wynn, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the News Hour, the Supreme Court considers loosening restrictions on campaign donations. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Historian Heather Cox Richardson told KPBS earlier this year that the people who insist Americans are polarized are those who benefit from the division. She argued the vast majority of Americans can find common ground on important issues, and the trick, she said, is to inspire people to step up and reclaim the middle. But what does that process look like? Well, for answers, KPBS's Amita Sharma turned to John Porton, who specializes in the study of peace, conflict, and civil society.
John, despite her history as a divisive figure herself, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene recently posted on social media that there exists a toxic political industrial complex in this country that thrives on dividing us. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the strength of that industry is probably the distinguishing characteristic of the political moment that we're living through today, in fact.
Who is in that toxic political industrial complex, and what is the motive behind dividing the American people?
It's money and power, or freedom for politicians from the consequences of egg prices. I would say that the industry probably has two sort of sides that exist in symbiosis. On one side, you have social media and to some extent traditional media that are really focused on bringing eyeballs predictably into places where advertisers can reach them, and then the sort of personalities who can be rocketed to stardom on the backs of some viral interactions. And they have really come to understand that we as people love to see things that make us feel moral outrage. We love to see things that make us feel anxious or afraid. And then on the other side, there are political movers, some of whom are elected politicians, others of whom are maybe policy influencers or people who benefit from having a large swathe of Americans who are really focused on the issues that they get to dictate as being zero-sum and yet somehow existential to the survival of our society. And as long as we're consuming anxiety, outrage-provoking content about those things, they have a lot more freedom to operate in the policy areas that really matter to them without facing a great deal of accountability from us as voters.
If creating disunity among Americans is a deliberate strategy, then how do people themselves, say in a place like San Diego, bridge the gap?
We've got to develop the discipline to turn away from people who are telling us that there's no solutions other than to have, our neighbors lose. We have to turn to leadership that's going to talk to us about kitchen table issues and talk about how we can forge consensus. And that's going to require us to shut off that instinct to seek the moral outrage and the anxiety.
Give me an example of how at the local level here in San Diego, there are some issues that San Diegans can come together on that don't involve those zero-sum issues.
Sure. Nobody wants a dirty beach. Very few people want the library in their neighborhood to close. They don't want, someone whose spouse is sick to have to miss work and not be able to pick up their kids. There are all sorts of issues that we all more or less agree on that could benefit from organization at the neighborhood level.
Let's take homelessness as an example. It's been a hugely challenging problem to resolve. What does real coalition building among residents look like? What does action, what do potential solutions look like?
There are people who in your neighborhood, in our neighborhoods are suffering, and there's some amount of good that can be done helping them. Do you volunteer at a soup kitchen? Do you try and set up a food drive? Are there ways that you can think about reaching out to the homeless community by organizing your neighbors in a way to provide aid for these people? And that sort of someone is suffering immediately and I want to help them out creates this kind of organizational structure, creates this accountability among neighbors, builds this kind of tolerant, conversation-seeking organization that doesn't start with the contentious issue. It starts with the thing we all want, which is the people in our neighborhoods to be better off.
John, how vital is this work in securing this country's future?
I think in some ways it's hard to come up with anything that's more important. We all know that there are individuals and companies that have resources and power that are beyond anything that we have as individuals to help and protect our families and our neighbors. What we have as a resource and what we've abdicated to some extent over the last 20 or 30 years is our strength in numbers. The way that we push back against forces that want to pick our neighborhoods and communities and even families apart is to find some way to create a fabric that they cannot tear. When you gather that momentum and we have the resources that we can use to advocate for our own communities and our own neighbors, that's when we can put up serious resistance to any sort of an organization that wants to come in from outside and make our lives worse.
John, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Public Matters is a partnership with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. Well, new help is available for San Diegans looking to buy their first home. County supervisors approved a $2.5 million grant to help low and medium income first-time home buyers with down payments, closing costs, and low interests deferred payment loans. It's called CalHome. 20 eligible home buyers will receive 30-year, 3% interest loans with deferred payments. To learn more about eligibility and how to apply, you can visit the county's Housing and Community Development Services website. And if you've been in the market for a new car but thought prices were already too high, experts warn to prepare for sticker shock again next year. Ivan Rodriguez has the latest outlook on the auto industry and what buyers should know.
This fall, average new car prices briefly topped $50,000 for the first time before slipping back under that mark. But now experts tell me they expect car prices to head back over that level, and this time they might stay there. Tariffs, changes in fuel efficiency, and falling interest rates are all playing a role in pushing car costs up, despite the Trump administration's views to the contrary, according to industry experts. The increased price tag of cars is part of a larger affordability crisis.
I think for a lot of people, you almost kind of have to unlearn everything prior to your car purchase from last time because everything has changed.
Ivan Drury with Edmunds says people who haven't purchased a car in the last 6 to 7 years will likely be met with sticker shock.
You bought pre-COVID. You were looking at vehicle prices closer to $38,000 to $39,000. Right now, that 49, that 50, that's sticker shock. That is very jarring.
Car buyers often shop based on their anticipated monthly payment, with roughly 80% of new car sales financed, according to Experian. Nearly a fifth of new cars now have monthly payments of $1,000 or more, Experian says, a result of a 30% increase in car prices and sharply higher interest rates since October 2019. To end the year, Drury expects average prices to rise again because of luxury car sales.
December, expect another high number, over 50K. Yeah, I could definitely see that happen. January, things slow down a little bit, right? They're actually trying to sell a lot of old inventory. We'll probably see 25%, maybe 20% of the vehicles sold in January being 2025 model year.
The Federal Reserve is currently holding its final meeting of the year and is expected to announce another interest rate cut tomorrow, which could reduce borrowing costs for buyers, but it could also give dealers room to increase their prices, keeping total monthly payments the same or even higher. In Atlanta, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
With Christmas coming up fast, traditional depictions of Santa Claus have not always been inclusive, but a Black Santa movement is changing that. As Madison Wilbur reports, there's a demand for representation.
Jingle bell, jingle all the way.
This is the Willis household, and here, Christmas is a big deal.
We decorate for every holiday.
So is making sure everyone in the family sees themselves in the decorations.
If there's just a single representation of Santa, then the kids that are not represented in that fashion, in that light, they will wonder, okay, am I being left out, or what is the situation? Like, why am I not feeling associated with the Santa Claus I'm seeing?
According to the National Santa website, Santas of color make up less than 5% of mall Santas across the country. Stafford Braxton started Santas Just Like Me to help bring more representation to the tree.
When I was growing up, you might see a black character in the background in some of the Christmas movies. Like one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. And the housekeeper, the cook, was a black woman. And she had a line or two, which was great, but that was pretty much it. So you did not really see people of color represented during Christmas. Santa can be in all colors, shapes, sizes. He doesn't fit the one mold like we were taught growing up.
Terry Scott is a local Santa in Fresno. You might have seen him at some events across town.
You know, you have other people who want to criticize it, but you cannot criticize love.
never thought that it would go far, but it's just so many races. You name it, just walk up to me, hey, can I take a picture with you? Can I take a picture with you? More, yes.
And as I was talking to Scott, the next thing we heard was, quote, I have been looking for a dark-skinned Santa.
It's finally time that we actually show spirit to not only one person or one side, but to everybody in every race and every color. Being a dark-skinned Santa, you can represent, anything. Black Santa, Puerto Rican Santa, you could do it all. So it's really important to me, especially to my daughter. It's that deep because for a little kid, they want to see someone that looks like them and they want to feel connected.
We have a warming trend that will win out for most of the interior through Wednesday and into Thursday as well. But with that said, there's one exception that's a highly populated exception right along the immediate coast, and including much of the city of San Diego will actually be a little cooler on Wednesday right along the coast. But for inland areas, will be noticeably warmer on Wednesday. And some of you are going to be challenging record highs if you're tuning in from areas like Ramona, for example, later this week. Tonight, though, we'll get down to 49. It'll be a mainly clear time for us, kind of a cool start, but overall with a strong ridge of high pressure flexing its muscle over the southwest, diverting the storm track well to the north with soaking rain up in Washington and Oregon and some very high elevation snow. We're running warmer here. Interior areas will be 10 to 20 degrees above historical averages. So while we may be just a smidge cooler actually right along the coast on Wednesday, inland areas, even just a few dozen miles inland or a dozen or 2 miles inland, you're going to notice a warming trend, and that's going to be a pretty significant one. So here we are in Ramona. Again, we have your eyes on you because you have a good chance of breaking a record high. 86 is our forecast for tomorrow. We'll be around 75 in San Diego. El Cajon, 85. Borrego Springs back up to 80. And when we take a look at some record challenging highs across the western U.S., Ramona's atop the list here, 86. That would break the daily record high by 5 degrees. Previous record for the date, 81 from 1975, tied 21 years ago. We should smash that record. Almost a record in Needles or Ukiah, way to our east and way to our north. Almost up into record territory in Burns, Oregon. Ontario, Oregon, way to the north will actually break a record. So we're not alone with this. But it will be very warm across the west. North winds on Thursday for all of us. And the coastal forecast, you can see low to mid 70s over the next few days for the coast. We do cool down then into the weekend and early next week. Inland areas, here we are, very, very warm Wednesday. That's your best shot for a record in Ramona. Back down to 80 on Thursday and cooling significantly through the weekend. Mountains here hanging out in the low 60s. Not bad for this time of the year before a cool down. And in the deserts, we're hanging out near 80 degrees there. But again, there will be some cooling that follows for Saturday and a very pleasant Sunday as well. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
And be sure to add KPBS to your podcast playlist. We have daily content from our newsroom with San Diego News Now and Midday Edition. And we also have a series including the award-winning Freeway Exit and our latest series called One of Their Own. Just search for KPBS on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. An upcoming performance with dancers and musicians is about honoring the little things alongside the heaviness and chaos of the world. KPBS arts reporter Julia Dixon-Evans takes us inside a rehearsal.
Dancer and choreographer Giovanna Francisco says she is most aware of outside pressures based on how they feel in her body.
I was noticing how taking on the weight of things with things in my family or things just in the world and the chaos of everything all the time, and how it would make me feel heavy and it would translate into my movement. And I started to think about how this is something that we all experience.
Francisco is the creative director of All the Big and Little Things, which is informed by the ways we carry our burdens.
So I was wanting to explore how we can better tune into those moments where we might be aware of it and other times where we might not be, and learn to accept both and embrace both versus trying to change anything.
Francisco worked with other movement and sound artists to design a production that sits somewhere between choreographed and improvised.
Can you do the rain stick?
Yes.
Musician Zane Shrem-Beznoi was prompted by Francisco to study how sound and music are perceived.
Can we notice our relationship to sound? Can we notice when it turns into music or when we feel like it's music? And kind of like blurring that line.
These sounds include clarinets, slide whistles, harp, poetry, even balls bouncing on hand drums. For Francisco, this sort of cross-disciplinary work is a strength of the region.
I think that says a lot about what kind of place San Diego is, where there's not this, I guess, criteria to define yourself as any one particular thing.
Performances take place this weekend at San Diego City College's City Gallery. Julia Dixon-Evans, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On NPR's Morning Edition, some states are trying to lower the costs of health care premiums for people who buy insurance on the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And KPBS Midday Edition is talking with the San Diego County District Attorney about scams to watch out for this holiday season. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.